most obvious reason to do yoga is, first of all, with the physical practice, to take better care of the body. Because yoga balances out the joints, the muscles of the body in a way that keeps the body healthy. And many of the other activities we do, whether it's work or even sports or pleasure, recreation, walking, that sort of thing, it tends to work just certain muscles, and sometimes that can throw the body out of balance. And so you start to have joint problems over time with the knees, the hips, the shoulders. And yoga just gives you a chance to balance out all the parts equally, so there's more equal energy. And not only the physical body functions, but the organs function better. And so it's a nice thing to add to whatever you do. And of course, there's the aspect of working with the mind to reduce stress, to make the mind more clear, more focused, even more creative, and more open and accepting. So it has that benefit for the mind as well. And certainly when you work with the breath, I mean, almost no other discipline focuses so clearly on the breath in a way that it enhances all of the activities that you do. So when you're doing a breath practice in yoga, it's really giving you a good support for whatever you want to do in your life. So yoga is something that you add to your life. It's a nice addition to any kind of activity. People have the impression that they're supposed to be a certain way to do yoga, like they're supposed to be flexible, or they're supposed to be young or athletic, or any of these things. And the truth is, most of the people that practice yoga that I run into, they do it because they know they need it, not because they're flexible or because they're sporty or anything else like that. Certainly those people do yoga also, but people do it because they know they need it. And you don't have to be any particular person to do yoga.
Can you get it in a yoga class? Is it what?
It would be really good to understand what enlightenment is, because we turn it into such a big word that it seems like something so hard to get that you have to chase after it and go farther and farther, and it sounds so abstract and difficult. The people want something from yoga, but they're not quite sure, they don't quite know exactly what it is that they want. They just know there's something that's supposed to be really good that you get from it. And enlightenment originally meant to be full of light. And they understood that in a spiritual sense to be a spiritual light. The light of the heart, the light of your awareness, the light of love, all of that's part of enlightenment. So to experience love through the heart is a form of enlightenment. To experience understanding through the mind is a form of enlightenment. And really the quest of yoga is to expand that light into every part of your life. And so it's not so much to become enlightened as it is to live a life that's full of light, an enlightened life. That means full awareness in the mind, in the emotions, in the heart, in the body, and with the understanding that that light is something that's not limited to the body or limited to the life we live right now. That's a light that goes on and on. And in that sense, that's the spiritual aspect of yoga, which is to have that experience of light even beyond just what we ordinarily experience as the body, as our day-to-day life. And so it's something that, yes, you experience right here and now. If you couldn't experience it right here and now, you probably won't be able to experience it in the future either. The only time you can ever become enlightened is right now. And so we're looking to have that experience, at least in some small way. And once you have the experience in a small way, that small way starts to become bigger. And it just becomes fuller at a very natural, organic pace. The most obvious challenge in yoga is the mind. I mean, people understand yoga to be meditation, and that's true. And then they have a hard time meditating because of the mind. And also in the body, they understand yoga to be a practice with the body, but they experience problems in the body not just because the body's stiff, but because the mind places limitations on the body. And it's very difficult to work directly with the mind. You can't easily stop the mind or make the mind do what you want it to. The more you try, the more difficult it becomes. So the people who invented Hatha Yoga, the Hatha Yogis basically said, when you work with the body, you work with the mind. So as you work with stretching and working the body, then the mind becomes more flexible. As the body becomes more strong, the mind becomes more strong, in the sense of becoming more clear, and also something that's more useful to you instead of something that causes difficulty in your life. So it's a very practical understanding that in working with the body, you're working with the mind the limitations of the mind, and then the mind becomes more flexible, and it becomes much more your friend. So in making the body a friend, you're making the mind a friend. The breath is the medium between the body and the mind. So as you move the body, hopefully you're breathing, and the breath is your contact between the body and the mind. Basically, when the breath is very irregular, the mind is very hard to enjoy or to control. And bad breathing is actually contagious. If you get into a crowded bus with a lot of people who are hyperventilating, pretty soon you'll have the same breath pattern as everybody else on the bus because that pattern of breathing is very powerful. If you get into and the mind becomes very upset and busy from that because everybody's thinking about different things and breathing that way. When you get into a classroom of people who are breathing in a more smooth and balanced fashion, your breath becomes smooth and balanced. And with that, the mind becomes very contented and very awake and aware, and also very much at ease. And so it's through moving the body, you move the breath. As the breath becomes smooth and even, then the mind becomes, again, something that's very helpful to you as a state of awareness. The mind is really not just a thing that thinks, it's a state of awareness. If you're in a very contented, happy mind, what you experience is happiness and love and contentment. If you're in a very upset mind, it's really a state of awareness that doesn't become centered and is very much moved by different emotions or influences, and you never feel centered or happy or at ease. It's really a state of awareness that we call the mind. And so you influence the state of awareness with the breath. A contented breath makes for a contented mind. An upset breath makes for an upset mind. I have, of course, my own personal practice, but to be honest, very often it's a lot easier in a group because you've got that energy of the group that supports you, that inspires you, and as you start to move together, all the movements become more coordinated. Everybody in the class moves together, not rigidly like the military, but more in the feeling of a flow of energy that's moving through the class. And the teacher is just directing that flow of energy, and it's like jumping into a stream. It's very easy to jump into the stream and swim. When you're all by yourself and there's no current, it's a lot more work to swim. And in your own practice, it's good to do the work by yourself. It's even good to have one-on-one instruction from a teacher. But when you're in a group of people, there's that much more flow of energy, and it just makes it that much more nice and comfortable to do together.
As for your own personal practice, this is always like almost an indecent question, but what would you say is the thing you work towards? What is the most difficult or the most the highest goal that you're working?
The thing I work towards is to enjoy my practice. Honestly, I mean, as a yoga teacher, every day I'm teaching day after day. I spend my whole day talking about yoga, directing yoga, teaching yoga, and then when it comes back to nourishing my own practice, it's not about so much about doing more advanced postures as it is being nourished by just enjoying my practice. And I think the highest intention for people in doing a yoga practice is to learn how to enjoy it. And it's good to have goals to work towards, and we get this feeling that we progress in our yoga by having goals, but we can also get really severe about these goals, and we push ourselves and discipline ourselves to get better and better in doing this. And sometimes you start to lose the joy in even doing it because you're trying to achieve or attain something. And at that point, you've kind of lost the practice. So I try to make my practice something that I want to do tomorrow as much as I enjoy it today. And then I know the discipline's not so hard because I'll always come back to doing it because I like it. And so my highest intention is to make my practice something I like. It doesn't mean I let myself get lazy, but I also make sure the practice is giving me what I need today. What I need today may be different from what I need tomorrow. And so the practice changes according to what I need. And it's always there for me in that way. There's one definition of discipline we have in our studio. It's on a plaque, and it says, discipline is remembering what you want, which is nice because sometimes the discipline is all about, I need to do this in this way because that's how it's done, and you forget what you want from doing the yoga. If I remember what I want, then my discipline is always going to take me closer to what I want. And what if what I want is to enjoy my life, to be relaxed in my life, and to lead a fuller life, if I remember that desire, then my discipline is always focusing on what makes my life better, and the life of people around me better too. And if anything takes away from that, then I can let that go from my life. If a certain thing in my life is not serving me or not making my life fuller, my discipline helps me understand I don't need to do that. You know?
Yeah.
Or at least I don't need to do it in that way.